Circuit de la Ferté Gaucher, France, midnight whisper of the elite. Hidden deep within the rolling French countryside, shrouded by dense pine trees and cloaked in secrecy, the Circuit de la Ferté Gaucher came alive, but only for those deemed worthy. A glittering serpent of asphalt carved like a jewel into the earth, its 3.6-kilometer track twisted with brutal curves and sudden chicanes. Floodlights cast an ethereal silver glow over the tarmac, illuminating the glinting bodies of exotic supercars like a ritual altar of gods preparing for war. Tonight, this place wasn't open to the public. No press. No noise from the outer world. Just the ultra-elite, the underground royalty of speed and scandal, gathered in secret for a race that wasn't just about horsepower, it was about power, legacy, and dominance. Helicopters with silent rotors hovered high above. Black Bentleys, Lamborghinis, Paganis, and Koenigsegg's lined the perimeter like coiled panthers, each worth more than a private jet. Champagne flowed like rivers. Designer gowns clung to hourglass figures. Men in bespoke suits leaned on carbon fiber beasts worth millions. And in the center of it all, Daimon Levesque. He didn't just own the night. He commanded it. Leaning against his Aston Martin Valkyrie AMR Pro, a masterpiece of performance and violence, the custom body was bathed in obsidian black with crimson veins running along the carbon panels, like blood beneath skin. Its rear wing extended like a blade, glimmering with power. The engine purred even at rest, an animal ready to rip the world apart at his command. Daimon himself stood with a casual arrogance that made others step back. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a tailored black racing suit left unzipped at the top to expose a chiseled chest and a silver pendant hanging low, his aura was impossible to ignore. His face, strikingly symmetrical, dusted with stubble, jawline like carved, carried the dangerous elegance of a man who had no fear. Piercing gray eyes scanned the crowd like a lion bored of prey. Women stared. Men seethed. But no one envied Daimon more than for the woman he held by the waist. She was a Russian goddess, and her name was Anastasia Volkova. A vision in a backless crimson silk gown that clung to every curve like it was painted on, she was a walking siren. Her icy platinum hair spilled down her back in soft, undulating waves. Sapphire eyes sparkled like frost under moonlight. Full lips stained with wine-red gloss curved in a knowing smirk. Her skin, flawless porcelain, glowed beneath the lights as she leaned into Daimon with the intimacy of a woman who owned his nights. A former Russian ballerina turned billionaire heiress, Anastasia was more than arm candy. She was dangerous, beautiful, and unreachably rare, and the sight of her perched on Daimon's hip made other women wither in self-doubt. He was cocky about it too. Possessive hands gripped her waist, brushing her cheek with a thumb while meeting the stares of other men with an arrogant half-smile. Jealousy is the tax of beauty, he muttered to no one in particular, but loud enough to be heard by the nearby admirers. Laughter followed him. But so did tension. Because tonight, Daimon wasn't just the spectacle. He was the main event. The race had drawn challengers from around the globe, each one a legend in their own right. But tonight, they were just names lined up to fall before Daimon's dominance. The challengers. Takeshi Zero Blade Nakamura, Japan. A razor-sharp prodigy from Kyoto, clad in minimalist black, with a scar running down his cheek, a gift from a crash he miraculously survived. Takeshi drove the Nissan GT-R 50 Italdesign Special, modified to illegal levels with neon underglow and stealth mode suspension. His reputation? Clinical. Fast. Deadly. His family ran one of Japan's largest arms conglomerates. He wasn't here for fun. He was here for vengeance. Daimon once humiliated his older brother in a Monaco race. And the next challenger. Ricardo El Diablo Santiago, Mexico. Street racer turned cartel prince, Ricardo was all tattoos, fire, and fury. Clad in a blood-red jacket over a bare chest, gold chains gleaming, he arrived in a Koenigsegg Jesko Absolute, chrome-plated with sugar skull decals. He smoked Cuban cigars before every race like a war ritual, Word was, he bet a man's life on tonight's outcome. He wanted not just victory, but Daimon's public fall. And the last challenger. Sheikh Zayed al-Mukhtar, Middle East. Youngest son of a royal petroleum dynasty, Zayed was mysterious, calculating, and loaded beyond comprehension. Draped in a dark gold racing suit with custom embroidery and Arabic calligraphy, he piloted a Bugatti Bolide, coated in gold flakes and sapphire trim. Stoic behind mirrored aviators, he barely spoke, but his record spoke volumes. He didn't lose. Ever. And he hated Daimon for once beating his father in Dubai. The crowd thickened as engines began to roar. Camera drones zipped silently through the air like techno hornets. A hidden orchestra played a slow, suspenseful symphony as the drivers stepped toward their cars. Anastasia pressed a kiss to Daimon's cheek, whispering something in Russian that made him grin devilishly. Lights dimmed. The moon broke through the clouds. Flames shot up from the trackside as the announcer's voice echoed through hidden speakers, crisp and commanding. Ladies and gentlemen of the circle, place your bets. The gods are watching. And only one will survive the legend. Daimon slipped into the cockpit of the Valkyrie, pulling on his gloves like a king donning his crown. He looked to his side, eyes locking briefly with Takashi, who only nodded coldly. Then at Ricardo, who flipped him the finger with a grin. And finally at Zayed, who didn't even acknowledge him. Daimon smiled. Because they were all focused on beating him. But he was only focused on winning. The race of gods begins. A sudden silence fell over the secretive Circuit de la Ferté Gaucher. Time seemed to hold its breath. Red. 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 The start lights blinked in deadly rhythm. Green. And the world exploded. Tires shrieked like banshees as 4 supercars launched forward like missiles shot from the bowels of hell. Smoke roared from burning rubber, engines howled in unison, 1,000+ horsepower beasts snarling to be first, to dominate, to destroy. The Nissan GT-R 50 of Takashi Nakamura was the first to surge ahead, slicing the wind with surgical precision. He was calculated, brutal, silent, his eyes narrowed like a sniper. His foot sank into the throttle, and the twin turbos screamed. He darted through the opening curve like a ghost, milliseconds ahead of Ricardo Santiago's Koenigsegg, who came in hot, too hot. El Diablo was laughing inside his cockpit, blood pumping like a drug in his veins. The Koenigsegg fishtailed on a curve, but he spun the wheel like a madman and corrected with the grace of a devil dancing on ice. He kissed the edge of the grass and roared past Takashi on the next straight, sparks flying from the undercarriage. Behind them, Sheikh Zayed's Bugatti Bolide glided like a golden bullet, smooth, majestic, but with the ominous calm of a serpent coiled to strike. His hands never shook. He didn't blink. He didn't need to. He was born into this speed. Born to dominate. But none of them saw Daimon coming. 3 seconds in, and he was already behind them, on purpose. Inside the Aston Martin Valkyrie, Daimon's gloved fingers tightened around the wheel like a man gripping the edge of sanity. The world blurred into tunnels of light and shadow. His jaw was clenched, eyes wide with beautiful madness. He didn't race to win. He raced to crush. Come on, little gods, he muttered with a grin. Show me fear. He downshifted. And the Valkyrie screamed. The car roared past the pit wall like a demon uncaged, overtaking the Bugatti on a tight inside turn, barely missing the grass by inches. The crowd gasped, several stood from their VIP booths, spilling champagne and disbelief. Inside the cockpit, Daimon's eyes burned. He wasn't blinking. He was feeling. The car was an extension of his will, and his will was chaos. Lap 2. Takashi tried to hold the lead until he miscalculated turn 6. Daimon's Valkyrie brushed past him on a curve so sharp it should have ended in death. The tail of Daimon's car clipped the air in front of Takeshi, creating vacuum drag. The GTR-50 lost stability, front tires shuddering. Shit! Takeshi pulled too hard on the wheel. The crowd screamed as his car spun sideways, launched off the curve, and went flying into the grass embankment. Metal shrieked. Sparks burst. The GTR flipped twice. Boom. Smoke. Silence. A red flare went up. Medics rushed, but the race didn't stop. Only 3 remained. And now, they were out for blood. Ricardo roared up beside Daimon, the Koenigsegg swerving dangerously close, trying to ram the Valkyrie on the straight. Their carbon mirrors kissed. Sparks flew again. Inside his cockpit, Ricardo was snarling like a beast. You want war? Let's dance, puta madre. But Daimon laughed. He braked. Let Ricardo pass. Then, he slingshot drifted around him with a flick of his wrist and a dance of madness, fishtailing so close to the wall that the crowd screamed again, thinking he would crash. But he didn't. He just shot out of it like a phoenix from fire. Ricardo was now chasing his ghost. The final lap came. Only Zayed kept up. The Bugatti Bolide surged next to Daimon's Valkyrie. 2 titans. 2 juggernauts. Inches apart. The track narrowed at the final S-turn. There wasn't enough space for both cars. But neither backed off. Inside the Bugatti, Zayed's hands were stone. Unmoving. Inside the Valkyrie, Daimon's eyes were wildfire. Alive. They entered the curve, shoulders clenched, tires shrieking, crowds on their feet. Some held their breath. Some were screaming. Some turned away. Because only one would come out alive. Zayed's front right wing clipped Daimon's tail. The Valkyrie lifted slightly. The Bolide skidded into the gravel on the outer edge, dancing with death. It looked like both would crash. Everyone thought this was it. But Daimon spun the wheel left, countered the drift, and slid sideways across the finish line. Like a drifting god. The crowd erupted. Daimon. Mon Dieu, he won. He's insane, he's a fucking legend. People stood on tables. Fireworks exploded. Security couldn't hold the masses. Phones captured the moment as the Valkyrie came to a smoking stop. Steam hissed from the engine. The scent of burnt rubber filled the air like a holy incense. Daimon climbed out slowly, helmet tucked under his arm, sweat slicked, panting, glorious. And she was there. Anastasia Volkova. She ran to him in that crimson dress, heels abandoned, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Without a word, she leapt into his arms. Their bodies collided. Their lips met like an explosion, wet, desperate, victorious. He lifted her off the ground, hands wrapped around her waist, her fingers tangling into his hair. You're insane, she whispered breathlessly. You love it, he growled, before kissing her again. And the world cheered. Because tonight, Daimon Levesque wasn't just the king. He was the god that even death couldn't catch. The air was still thick with engine smoke, champagne mist, and the heady scent of burnt rubber when the hum of another beast echoed from the far end of the Circuit de la Ferté Gaucher's velvet-paved private entrance. Not just any hum, a low, thunderous purr. Dark. Sleek. Sinister. All heads turned. From the shadowed gates emerged a midnight black Lamborghini Revuelto, custom-tuned, silent as a panther until it purred into the spotlight. The lights danced across its blade-like contours, glinting against its obsidian sheen like a predator licked with moonlight. The crowd fell into a hush. It glided to a stop with a soft hiss of hydraulics, effortless dominance. Then the driver's door opened. Vasper Mondragon, 6'5" of impossible symmetry and brutal elegance. Dressed in a black mandarin collar-tailored suit, no tie, top buttons undone to reveal the shadow of carved muscle beneath. The cool night wind tousled his dark hair just enough. A single silver ring glinted on his finger. His face, devastating. Cold. Sculpted by fire and gods. But it was the passenger who stole the air from every lung. Shanti. She stepped out in a black skin-tight dress, mid-thigh, long-sleeved, high-necked, but scandalously form-fitting. The fabric clung to her like it was painted on, outlining every devastating curve of her hourglass frame. Her hair was slicked back into a high ponytail, cascading like silk down her back, and her red lips were a silent weapon. She walked as if the earth itself dared not tremble beneath her. The silence shattered with whispers, gasps, and the snap of camera phones. Who is she? She's not from here, my God, look at her. Is that Vasper's woman? Even Daimon's pupils contracted. Standing beside his Valkyrie, champagne still dripping from his last victory, Daimon Levesque blinked slowly as if hit by a sniper's bullet. His cocky smirk faltered. Anastasia Volkova stiffened beside him, her grip on his arm tightening ever so slightly. Shanti didn't look around. She didn't have to. Every eye was already on her. Including Anastasia's. The Russian beauty's jaw clenched, her envy barely veiled beneath her crimson lips. But her icy eyes betrayed a secret, flickering once to Vasper, then back to Shanti, then to Vasper again. Because for a brief, treacherous moment, she too was mesmerized. He came, Daimon murmured under his breath. Of course he did, Anastasia replied, venom on her tongue. Vasper didn't break his stride. He walked forward, hand resting on the small of Shanta's back, possessive, commanding, intimate. He knew the cameras were rolling. He knew Daimon was watching. And he knew Shanti was the match that could burn the entire kingdom to ash. They came face to face. Daimon's grin returned, wider now. Too wide. Well, well. The Phantom King has arrived. Vasper's gaze met his, slow and unreadable. Calm. Deadly calm. You put on a good show, Vasper said, voice cool as brushed steel. Daimon raised a brow, eyes never leaving Shanta's face. The show was missing something, he said slowly. But not anymore. His words were laced with double meaning, and every soul around them felt it. The atmosphere cracked. The air snapped with tension. Anastasia shifted, standing straighter, trying to reassert her position by Daimon's side. But Shanti, still silent, still watching, was glowing in the starlight, untouchable. Her hand drifted to Vasper's wrist, anchoring herself to him without looking away from Daimon. Vasper noticed. And his arm wrapped tighter around her waist. Eyes off her, Daimon, he said, the edge of warning unmistakable. Unless you want to lose more than just a race. Daimon chuckled, but it was forced. His teeth flashed. Lose? Oh no, Vasper. I plan to win. In fact, he stepped closer. Their faces were now inches apart. I was just about to issue my next challenge. Let me guess, Vasper said dryly. You want something that doesn't belong to you. Daimon's eyes flicked to Shanti, hungrily, almost reverently. She's the prize. The world paused. Anastasia flinched. Gasps erupted from the elite spectators. A challenge of this kind was unheard of. Scandalous. Brutal. Ancient. But Vasper only smirked. Too calm. Too calculating. You really haven't changed, he murmured. Still thinking you can gamble with things you can't afford. Try me, Daimon said, stepping closer. I haven't lost a race yet. And I haven't had a reason to push myself, until now. A pause. The women stared at one another, Anastasia burning, Shanti unreadable. But beneath the surface, fire surged in their eyes. Vasper leaned forward, whispering near Daimon's ear. You'll wish you stayed dead the day you try to touch what's mine. Shanti gripped his hand tighter. And still, Daimon smiled. Come to the after party, he said suddenly, voice bright. Too bright. My estate. Poolside. Drinks. Fire. Music. Everyone will be there. Then he turned, looking directly into Shanta's eyes. She deserves to see what a winner looks like. That was it. Vasper took a step forward, ready to rip something apart. But Shanti touched his chest, calming him without words. Daimon saw it. He hated it. We came for a conversation, Vasper said coldly. Not a circus. Privacy's overrated, Daimon grinned. You want to talk? You come. Or you walk. And with that, he turned, wrapping his arm around Anastasia, who now stared daggers not at Shanti, but at Vasper. As they disappeared into the crowd, the tension lingered like smoke. 8:03 p.m., Daimon Levesque's estate. The night fell like a silk sheet over the city below. From the clifftop edge of Daimon Levesque's estate, the Parisian skyline shimmered, diamonds spilled across black velvet. It was a collision of old-world elegance and sinfully modern indulgence. The after-party had begun. At its center sprawled a massive, serpentine infinity pool that blurred into illusion, its glassy surface stretching into the darkness, rimless and hypnotic. It glowed soft blue under swaying lanterns strung above, their golden flickers dancing on water like fireflies trapped in crystal. Each breeze carried whispers of jasmine, fine cigars, and something deeper, something intoxicating. Power. Behind the garden, Daimon's three-story mansion loomed, a beast tamed in black steel and glass. Floor-to-ceiling windows exposed curated decadence, museum-grade artwork, a golden spiral staircase, a whisper-quiet private elevator. This was no home. It was a shrine. An altar to his own myth. Music throbbed low, sultry, felt more than heard, vibrating through stone and skin. Around the pool, women lounged like sirens, basking in their own glow. Oil-slicked limbs shimmered under moonlight. Tiny bikinis clung like a second skin, most in black, gold, or red, as if color alone could crown the queen of this unspoken war. Legs crossed. Hips cocked. Fingers traced the stems of Dom Perignon flutes with idle elegance. Laughter rang as some slipped into the warm water, flicking droplets onto already gleaming thighs. Others remained dry but dressed like couture fantasies, tight silks, sheer mesh, heels sharp enough to kill. Their boyfriends, if they existed, were shadows at their sides, forgotten. The buffet was obscene. A decadent three-tiered spread of French-Japanese fusion spilled across marble tables. Wagyu tartare shaved with truffle. Lobster tails drenched in yuzu butter. Mini foie gras eclairs. Gold-dusted sushi. Charcoal-grilled oysters. Caviar blinis. Each dish crafted not for consumption, but for reverence. Towering ice sculptures melted in slow motion beside raw bars of king crab, uni, and toro flown in just hours before. And at the far end of the garden, beneath a black canopy laced with fairy lights, draped in candlelit shadows, stood a curved obsidian leather sofa, massive and throne-like in its design. There they were. Vasper Mondragon, reclined like royalty, radiating the kind of dangerous composure that made men tense and women breathless. One hand rested on Shanta's thigh, not loosely, but tightly. Possessively. As if daring anyone to pry her from his grasp. She sat flush beside him, bodies nearly fused. Her black dress clung to every breath, her legs crossed neatly, trembling beneath his touch. Before them, on a black marble table, lay the rarest liquors known to man. A 1945 Chateau Mouton Rothschild. The Macallan M decanter. Remy Martin Louis XIII Black Pearl. A Yamazaki 55. Alongside them, obsidian trays of duck prosciutto, dark chocolate ganache, and fresh-cut figs, each chosen to complement the flavor of Rouen. Their corner had the best view. The infinity pool stretched before them like a dream. The city sparkled below. Stars blinked above. The air was perfect, cool, pine-tinged, laced with firewood and tension. But within this private corner, the air was war. Because Vasper wasn't alone. Flanking him like sentient shadows were the four guardians. Justin, tall, sleek, devastating. His angular jaw and cold, calculating stare screamed precision. Gabriel, beauty incarnate. Pale-eyed. His face angelic, his presence lethal, like a blade in a velvet sheath. Louis, dark, smirking, dangerous. Hands folded like a poker player seconds from striking. Handsomeness that demanded notice. Jacob, the most arresting. Short dark hair, eyes like frozen ocean. Broad shoulders beneath a crisp white shirt pulled taut across lean muscle. His stare was ice, and when it landed on Daimon, it sliced. No tattoos. No flash. But every inch of them radiated danger. Not bulky. Not loud. Just clean. Defined. Deadly. Women whispered. Gasped. Eyed them like prey. But the guardians didn't flinch. Not one glance spared for the half-naked temptresses slinking past. They hadn't come to flirt. They'd come to watch. To guard. Yet even they couldn't eclipse Vasper Mondragon. Not when he held Shanta like a storm he refused to unleash. Not when his presence darkened the air itself. And Shanty, she tried to pretend she didn't feel it. That she didn't notice. But her body betrayed her. Her breath trembled. Her back was too straight. Her thighs brushed his. His fingers moved in slow, lethal patterns on her skin, claiming, taunting. She stared at the skyline, forcing calm. But she could feel Daimon's gaze burning across her cheek. Across from them sat Daimon himself. A glass of Yamazaki in one hand. A smug smile on his lips. He lifted his glass. To the return of old friends, he said, voice like silk over razors. Vasper raised his glass next. So did the guardians, respect by formality only. Shanty followed, lifting a crystal glass of blood-red vintage wine. Her hand was steady, though her pulse was not. She forced a smile, polite, distant. Her eyes avoided Daimon's with surgical precision. But his didn't move. He drank, his eyes locked on her. Only her. Not even pretending anymore. Undressing her with a gaze so searing it made her skin crawl. And Vasper saw it. He always saw. His grip on her thigh tightened. Jacob's jaw flaxed. His knuckles went white. If ice could kill, Daimon would have already been ash. Gabriel and Louis stayed still. Stoic. But their silence was not passive. It was loaded. Their stillness, the calm before a strike. Then Vasper set his glass down. Hard. A sharp thud, not enough to shatter, but enough to silence a laugh 3 seats down. Daimon only smiled wider. As if Vasper weren't even there. As if Shanty was the only one who mattered. Across the pool, under a flood of golden lamplight, Anastasia lay sprawled on a lounger. Her gown clung tight. Her legs were long, crossed, perfect. Her face tilted toward the stars in mock relaxation, but her eyes? They were locked on Shanti. Boiling. Blazing. She was seething. It wasn't just jealousy, it was rage. Disbelief. That she wasn't the center of gravity tonight. That Shanti, quiet, unknown, untouched by scandal, was wrapped in the arms of a man no woman had ever tamed. Vasper Mondragon. Her fantasy. Her obsession. She'd imagined tasting him. Owning him. Feeling him groan in her ear with his hand around her throat, driving into her until she forgot her name. And now, she was watching another woman live that dream. And it was killing her. She heard the whispers, women giggling over the hot guys on Daimon's couch. And Daimon hadn't even asked her to sit beside him. Hadn't even looked her way. Whatever conversation was unfolding on that obsidian throne, it was exclusive. And she wasn't part of it. 3 silent guards stood nearby, focused on Vasper's corner like lions trained to kill. No one else dared approach. Only one server moved freely, a quiet man in black, pouring drinks with flawless timing, replenishing delicacies with grace. And still, the air grew tighter. The glint in Vasper's eye had darkened. Shanta's breathing had shortened. And Daimon just kept smiling. Whatever it is you're planning, Daimon, don't follow through. Vasper's voice cut low and cold, quiet, yet razor-edged. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. The weight behind it was steel. Tangible. His eyes, blue and lethal, locked onto Daimon's with a quiet fury that didn't flinch. And Daimon? He smiled. Unbothered. Unshaken. Amused, even. He knew Vasper had powers now, real ones. Abilities far beyond mortal comprehension. And yet, there wasn't a single tremor of fear in him. Not even a flicker. Oh, Vasper. He drawled, that crooked smirk stretching wider across his face. His tone was honeyed venom. You think I don't know you? A low, bitter chuckle spilled from his lips. I don't give a fuck. His voice cracked like a whip, hard, taunting, unapologetically bold. And those eyes of his, sharp as shattered glass, dared Vasper to lose control. Vasper didn't blink. But his gaze ignited. Hotter. Darker. More primal. His jaw ticked. A muscle pulsed in his cheek. His stance shifted forward, subtle but deadly, a predator inching closer to the kill. Behind him, the guardians responded instinctively. No words. No overt movement. But their bodies tensed, like coils wound tight beneath velvet. Gabriel. Justin. Louis. Jacob. They were no longer watching the party. Their eyes were locked on Daimon. Cold. Calculating. Prepared. Their posture remained deceptively casual. But their eyes gave them away, glinting like drawn blades in the dark. And Shanti. She froze. A chill traced her spine. Her breath caught halfway through her chest, refusing to move. Her fingers clutched the hem of her dress with white-knuckled restraint. She turned her head, just slightly, toward Daimon. A single, scathing glance. She regretted it instantly. Because the moment their eyes met, she saw it. That flicker. He liked it. He relished it. Even her hatred fed something dark and possessive in him. And though her glare was cold, Daimon's was fire, molten, cruel, and territorial. Vasper felt it. And it ignited him. Jacob's fists clenched at his sides. Who did you give the video to, Daimon? Vasper's voice was calm, still, but now heavier, like thunder pressed behind a closed door. You know it won't help you. No one will believe it. Not anymore. In this era, anything can be edited. That footage? It's worthless. A hoax. You know exactly what I mean. Gabriel raised his glass to his lips, voice cool and quiet as the surface of a lake. People don't believe what's real anymore, Daimon, he said, tone laced with irony. They believe what they're told to believe. The programming runs deep. Daimon's gaze slid from Shanti to Gabriel, and his grin only sharpened. Then he laughed. A low, broken sound, cracked and hollow, touched by madness. The air around them shifted. He leaned forward, just enough for the lights to catch the edge of something sinister in his eyes. The sound of his laughter prickled skin, sent shivers crawling through nerves. Vasper's jaw locked. Jacob's knuckles turned white. The Guardians? Still statues. Still quiet. But every breath they took now echoed with warning. What do you take me for? Daimon hissed, smile gone. His voice cracked sharp like splintered bone. An idiot? A fool? His gaze swept each guardian like a blade. It returned to Gabriel. No one blinked. Except Shanti. Her gaze dropped, ashamed. Sickened. As though she tasted something foul in the air. At least you know what you are, Vasper replied smoothly, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. Daimon's smirk faltered for a heartbeat. And Shanti felt it. She squeezed Vasper's hand, hard, grounding him. He didn't flinch. Instead, his other hand slid beneath the table, clamped tightly around her thigh. Possessive. Protective. Unapologetic. Daimon noticed. So did the Guardians. And Daimon's eyes darkened, his grin warping with fresh malice. Shanti regretted the dress. She should have worn jeans. A jacket. Anything that made her feel less exposed. But Vasper had warned her, if she didn't dress the part, she wouldn't even get past the gates. Now she sat in the lion's den, draped in a dress that clung to every inch of her skin. The fabric rode higher with every breath. And Daimon's stare devoured her. She felt violated by his gaze alone. Vasper shifted, wanting to shield her. His hand slid further over her thigh, trying to reclaim what Daimon's eyes had stolen. But it wasn't enough. She knew he regretted the outfit too. Oh, Vasper, Daimon crooned mockingly, leaning in again. Don't tell me you still haven't guessed who those videos are really for. His voice dropped to a whisper, acid slick and gleeful. If you're smart, you'll figure it out. His gaze turned to the Guardians. What about you four? Any guesses? He laughed, louder this time. Heads began turning. Conversations lulled. People leaned in. You think I leaked that to random nobodies for attention? Please. The laughter turned harsh. Ugly. Jacob's face darkened. He could see it now. The direction this was headed. The thread Daimon wanted to pull. If the wrong people saw those videos. The inner world. Their powers. Their very existence could unravel. And all because of a feud between two broken titans. Your parents will be so disappointed, Justin murmured suddenly, breaking the silence like a blade sliding from its sheath. When you're gone. His voice was soft. Smiling. But deadly. Every guardian turned toward him in sync, surprised. Except Vasper. And Shanti. She shivered. Justin was seated barely an arm's length away. And he hadn't raised his tone, but the threat in his words sliced clean. Aha, Daimon chided, wagging a finger like a schoolteacher. Justin, you can't do that. His voice turned syrupy. Condescending. That would be a catastrophic mistake for your precious inner world. He leaned forward again. Closer. Too close. Push the red button, and you'll start World War III. His voice dropped. Low. Cold. Commanding. Like he wasn't just part of this game, he was the dealer. It enraged everyone. I should have snapped your neck back at the hotel, Vasper said. Finally. No, calm now. His voice cracked like thunder beneath the silence. Pure rage surged in every syllable. His eyes glowed with something feral. His body leaned forward, every muscle drawn tight. Dangerous. Unchained. The guardians rose slightly from their seats. Poised. Shanti stopped breathing. The air around her was suffocating, choking on fury, madness, and unspoken power. She sat caught between the storm and the match, between Vasper's fury and Daimon's insanity. And all around them? The party continued. People laughed. Drank. Danced. Some swam in the glowing infinity pool, kissing beneath the stars. Others disappeared into shadows, grinding against walls, moaning in dark corners. Daimon chuckled again, low, deliberate, and soaked in quiet cruelty. It wasn't a laugh meant to charm or disarm. It was the kind that coiled like smoke into the ears of everyone who heard it, insidious and personal, a taunt cloaked in velvet. The sound slithered through the open expanse of the poolside lounge, wrapping around the polished columns and glass walls like a predator scenting blood. Vasper's jaw flaxed, a sinew ticking violently along his neck. His chest expanded with a slow breath, measured, lethal. Across the tension-thick air, their eyes locked, two tempests colliding in absolute silence. Unyielding. Seething. The guardians subtly shifted, their instincts humming like wires under strain. All four were still, but watching, calculating. Yet it was Jacob's steady gaze that stirred Vasper's fury the most. His stare was surgical. Cold. The faint lift of his brow held no judgment, only challenge, like a blade offered to a man already bleeding. Vasper's fists curled at his sides, knuckles white. Daimon reclined deeper into the plush velvet couch, his posture dripping with the kind of arrogance that made lesser men recoil. One leg sprawled carelessly, the other anchored wide, hands languid, one resting behind him, the other loose on his thigh, as if the entire mansion were an extension of his ego. Anyway, Daimon drawled, voice dragging slow and smooth like oil over fire. Isn't it strange, Vasper? First time I've heard you being accused of stealing a woman. Normally, they throw themselves at your feet. He paused, smirk deepening as his eyes flicked, sharp and heated, toward Shanti. Like my fiancée. I know you didn't take her. She chose you. His voice dropped, seductive and heavy with subtext. But this one. His gaze lingered on Shanti with invasive precision, like a scalpel poised above soft flesh. She visibly stiffened, her posture tightening as if trying to fold herself out of existence. Her hands clenched in her lap, knuckles pale against her trembling fingers. Vasper's stare grew darker, pupils dilated with unspoken violence. His breath came slow, controlled only by willpower. Rage licked at the corners of his composure. His teeth ground silently behind his clenched jaw, his frame trembling with pressure held just below the skin. The other guardians remained statuesque, but their eyes gave them away, glinting with anticipation and warning. Jacob's mouth was a hard line, his jaw tight. Then Daimon's voice shifted again, silken but barbed, as he leaned forward just slightly, enough to make his presence feel more suffocating. Tell me, Vasper, did you orchestrate Jake's plane crash to get her? His eyes never left Shanti. Seems a little too convenient. Jake dies, and poof, you're there to catch her like the hero. A shadow of a chuckle followed, quieter now, darker, like something slithering through the underbrush. I keep myself very informed, he said with a smile, each syllable laced with poison. Just so you know. The air thickened. Something unseen pulsed between them like a storm cloud ready to break. That's not what this is about, Vasper growled. His voice, low, hoarse, trembling with fury, seemed to warp the space around it. Shanti flinched at his tone, her eyes flicking to him in silent fear. Daimon's smirk faded. She's the reason you're here, Daimon snapped, voice cutting through the rising static. Don't kid yourself. He leaned in sharply now, elbows on his knees, face twisted with something ugly and ravenous. How do we know you won't go too far, Daimon? It was Jacob who broke the silence. His voice was a blade unsheathed, calm, but with razor edges. I'll win, Daimon cut him off, louder now, challenging Jacob and Vasper both, and I'll take what's mine. His gaze turned to Shanti, dark, feral, devouring. His legs spread wider. The leather of his pants stretched taut across his thighs. And then, it was visible. Brazen. He made no effort to hide it. No shame. Just provocation. He was fully hard. And he wanted them to see it. His tight black shirt clung to him like a second skin, muscles rigid beneath it, but it was his face, eyes burning, mouth curled in wicked glee, that struck the deepest blow. Shanti froze, blood draining from her face. Her lips parted, breath faltering in disbelief and silent panic. And that was when Vasper shattered. No words. No warning. He seized a nearby bottle, crystal and half full with aged amber liquor, and hurled it. The glass spun, a streak of light and fury, missing Daimon's head by a whisper before exploding against the concrete pillar behind him in a deafening shatter of shards. Daimon didn't blink. His eyes followed the blast, then returned to Vasper with amused indifference. Behind him, his guards stiffened, but Daimon raised a single hand. Stand down. Shanti gasped, hand flying to Vasper's arm, clutching him as though she could hold him back by touch alone. Her fingers trembled. Her breath hitched. The guardians stood still, but every muscle in their bodies screamed tension. Especially Jacob. His brow furrowed deeply now. Then, without a word, Jacob rose. He swept as he crossed to a nearby table draped in rich gold. Several women nearby gawked and whispered, enchanted by the cold fire in his steps. One reached to help him remove the cloth, giggling nervously as she handed it over. He accepted it without acknowledgement. Returning in silence, he flicked the shimmering gold fabric at Vasper with perfect aim. Cover her, Jacob said icily. Vasper caught it midair without turning his gaze from Daimon. Then slowly, tenderly, he faced Shanti and draped it over her trembling legs, shielding her from their eyes like a prince dressing his queen in armor spun from starlight. Daimon leaned forward again, elbows on his knees, fingers interlocked, eyes gleaming with predatory glee. The guardians tensed further, each of them staring daggers. The air throbbed with restraint. Across the lounge, Anastasia seethed. Her jaw clenched, hands white-knuckled in her lap as she glared daggers at Shanti, hate, envy, and something far more bitter flickering in her stare. Around them, the crowd was mesmerized. Women whispered in awe. Jacob's command. Vasper's fury. The way they shielded her like treasure. And then Daimon's gaze lifted, sliding from Shanti to Jacob, then across all four guardians. His lips twisted. Well, he murmured, tauntingly low. You think hiding her in gold will hide how delicious she looks? His tongue flicked across his bottom lip. That hunger in his eyes turned feral. And that was the end. Vasper rose. The movement was silent, smooth, swift as instinct. In one breath, he crossed the space and grabbed Daimon by the throat, flesh meeting flesh with brutal force, and lifted him clean off the floor. The gasp that swept through the lounge was electric. Daimon's boots dangled inches above the tiles, his body pinned against the couch. Vasper's arm was a cord of steel, his veins bulging with raw fury. Every inch of him radiated power barely held in check. Their faces were inches apart. Shanti was on her feet in seconds, wrapping her arms around Vasper's waist from behind, sobbing softly, her face buried against his spine. "Vasper, please," she whispered, voice breaking, breathless. "Stop, please." The Guardians moved as one, but halted. Their fury mirrored Vasper's. But even they feared what might happen if he lost control now. Everything stilled. Time, sound, the very air, they all stopped. And Daimon smiled. Even choking, he found breath enough to speak. "Show them," he rasped, lips curling, "who you really are, Vasper." His smirk widened. "Tell me, what are you?" Behind him, his guards readied for violence, but his free hand lifted once more. "Not yet." And Vasper's hand tightened just enough to make Daimon's smirk flicker. But it didn't vanish. "Not yet. Vasper, please." The words barely left her lips, no louder than a breath, fragile, trembling, and devastating. Shanta's voice was a silken thread stretched taut over razors, soft enough to make hearts ache, sharp enough to split the charged air. Her gaze was fixed on Vasper, wide and glistening with a volatile mixture of fear and longing. Her parted lips trembled, and her arms clung to him like a drowning soul grasping the last solid thing in a collapsing world. Daimon's head turned with a snap. His eyes locked onto her like a predator scenting blood. "Fuck," he growled under his breath, his voice dark and hungry, vibrating like thunder before a storm. "That voice is fucking delicious," he murmured, eyes dilating as his tongue flicked slowly across his lower lip, then sank his teeth into it, holding her gaze like he meant to tear into her soul. His expression twisted into something savage and slow, a smile dripping with unholy promise. Vasper's jaw clenched, stone hard. The sinews in his forearm bulged as his grip around Daimon's throat tightened, ruthless, unrelenting. The skin on his knuckles stretched white with pressure. Beside him, Jacob stood like a live wire, his own fury restrained by a threadbare thread. His jaw ticked with violent restraint, as if willing Vasper's hand to finish what it had started, to crush the life from Daimon in front of them all. "Shanti. Sit." Lewis's voice cut like steel, deep and resolute, echoing with command. She hesitated. Her body trembled against Vasper's. Her soul didn't want to move, didn't want to leave his warmth. But she obeyed. Slowly. Each inch she pulled away looked like it tore something invisible between them. Her fingers slid from his chest like petals falling in reverse gravity. And then, one reluctant step back. Daimon's smile widened, black and venomous. "I can't wait to hear her scream beneath me," he hissed, voice low and intimate, like he was already in her bed. "As I worship every perfect inch of her body." The words were gasoline. Vasper exploded. A guttural roar ripped from his chest as his arms surged upward, lifting Daimon clean off the ground with inhuman force. His eyes burned, molten with unfiltered rage. Anastasia screamed and lunged forward, but stopped, frozen, as Vasper's aura ignited around him like a wildfire, raw power licking the air. "Vasper." Justin's voice thundered. "He wants this. He's baiting you, let him go." But Vasper was gone. Lost to fury. His aura flared with a blinding surge, distorting the air with heat and rage. Lewis stepped in, eyes glowing faintly. One hand rose, fingers trembling, as he summoned his telekinetic power, forging an invisible wall of force between Vasper's wrath and Daimon's life. The strain hit him immediately. Lewis's jaw clenched, his entire body tensed like steel cables snapping. His palm trembled violently as he fought to suppress Vasper's godlike strength. Veins bulged down his forearms to the backs of his hands. He planted his legs wide, bracing himself against the storm that was Vasper. Shanti cried silently, shoulders trembling, breath shattering in her chest. Her eyes darted to Lewis. She saw it. The subtle twitch in his brow, the tightening of his stance. He was barely holding Vasper back. The other guardians stared, stunned. They had never seen Lewis struggle. His tailored suit clung to every tense muscle, every shaking fiber of his body. His power was absolute until now. Vasper was breaking it. And still, Vasper's gaze never left Daimon. His teeth were bared in a silent snarl. His lips curled back like a beast about to rip into flesh. Daimon, dangling, bleeding from his mouth, choking and smiling. Still. Defiant. Wild with dark glee. Blood gathered at the corner of his mouth. His face darkened, tinged purple from lack of air. And still, his smirk remained. Cameras zoomed in. Phones were raised. Dozens of lenses captured the moment from every angle. "I'll have her eventually," Daimon rasped, his voice shattered, broken, but clear. "She'll be mine." The words were poison. Gabriel and Justin reacted in unison, silent, swift. They closed in beside Vasper, one on each side. Their movements were smooth but deliberate, hands grasping Vasper's wrist, not with aggression, but with unshakable brotherhood. "Let go," Justin whispered, low and steady. For one heartbeat. Vasper didn't move. Then, his fingers opened. Daimon crashed to the ground. A heavy thud. He coughed, the sound wet and strained, clutching his neck. Shanti surged forward and wrapped herself around Vasper's torso, arms trembling, face buried in his chest. He didn't move. Chest heaving. Eyes distant. Fury simmering. Lewis gasped as he released the hold, staggering back, sweat gleaming on his temples. Daimon chuckled darkly between coughs, rubbing his neck with bloody fingers. "Show's over," he laughed, rising with exaggerated flair. He waved toward the cameras and stunned guests like a conductor ending a symphony. "Apologies for the drama. Please, carry on. Just another fight over a woman, right?" He twirled with theatrical elegance, arms wide, light catching the edge of his manic grin. "Let's enjoy the party. There's blood, chaos, passion. What's a Daimon Levac party without it?" The guests murmured. Some laughed nervously. Others whispered. Most resumed their conversations with casual disinterest. They had seen madness before. But this was different. Daimon turned, his smirk sharpening to a blade as he locked eyes with Vasper again. "My win in the race," he said coldly, "should be reason enough for you to accept a rematch in Japan." He grabbed Shanta's shoulder. Yanked her hard against his chest. She stiffened, refused to yield, but his voice was already digging deep. "Same place you lost to Jake," he whispered. Then, his gaze slid to the guardians. And stopped on Jacob. A knowing smile spread across Daimon's blood-smeared lips. "I know I'll win." "Don't worry," he whispered, voice low and edged with threat. "Your little secret? Safe." Jacob's eyes darkened like thunderclouds, and though his body never flinched, the air around him seemed to tighten. Lewis stepped forward. "Who's backing you, Daimon?" His voice was cold steel. "That bracelet, who gave it to you?" Daimon chuckled. After the race, he replied with syrupy calm. "You'll meet them." Then he turned back to Shanti. You may go, he said softly, darkly. Don't worry, baby, you'll be in my arms soon enough. Vasper moved. Like lightning. He swept Shanti into his arms without a word, without effort, and strode for the exit. His face was a mask of stone. Each step was thunder. Guests moved without thinking, parting like water around a blade. The guardians followed. All except one. Jacob. He stayed. Facing Daimon. Two titans in silence. Jacob's hands slipped into his pockets. Calm. Still. Daimon raised a glass lazily, swirling red wine with a smirk. You want her too, don't you? Daimon teased. It's obvious. Jacob leaned in. Close enough to kill. Who's holding the videos? He whispered, a dagger in every syllable. Daimon's grin stretched wider. Smart boy, you'll know soon. Invitations will arrive. And we'll all get properly acquainted. Jacob's breath brushed Daimon's ear. Venomous. I see. I'll be the one to burn your body, he murmured. And I'll make sure you're awake for every second. Then Jacob turned. Each step deliberate. Unyielding. A silent war drum. Behind him, Daimon sipped his wine with a grin like the devil's. Women whispered from the sidelines. God. Jacob is so fucking hot. Scary as hell, but damn. Anastasia ran to Daimon, desperate, eyes wide. Die. He shoved her aside with a shrug. Didn't even look. Then vanished into the mansion alone, the doors closing behind him like a curtain dropping on a masterpiece of carnage. The engines snarled like beasts loosed into the wild. It was long past midnight. The sky was ink black, save for the merciless, pale eye of the moon casting its silver luster across the twisting asphalt. No stars dared shimmer. No wind stirred the leaves. Only our convoy of wrath cut through the sleeping world, 6 hypercars, lithe and lethal, slicing through the silence like wolves unleashed in a land of ghosts. We weren't fleeing. We were retreating into war. The road ahead coiled through the forest like a serpent. Trees pressed in close, their branches skeletal in the moonlight, as if reaching out to claw at the throats of the gods who had trespassed into mortal soil. Vasper's Lamborghini Revuelto was a black comet streaking through that darkness, its engine roaring beneath us with the fury of something half alive. Inside, we were cocooned in shadow and carbon fiber, the hum of the electric torque whispering through my bones. I sat low in the seat, breath shallow, pulse pounding against my ribs like a drum of warning. My hands trembled faintly on my lap, the scent of his skin still clinging to me from the way he'd carried me out of Daimon's mansion, like I was the only anchor keeping him from setting the world ablaze. I turned my head slowly. Vasper was a sculpture of silent fury beside me, lit in fragmented light from the dashboard glow. His jaw was clenched so tightly that I could see the tension ripple across his cheek. The corded muscles in his forearms flexed as his fingers gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled control. Each breath he took was shallow and strained, as if it cost him effort not to scream. And his eyes, gods, his eyes. Glacial fire. A storm locked behind narrowed lids, the kind that raises empires. He hadn't spoken since we left Daimon's estate. Not one word. And yet, I could feel his rage like static in the air. But then, suddenly, startlingly, his right hand moved. Still tense, still burning with adrenaline, he reached over. His fingers slid under the backs of my thighs, firm and commanding, and with one swift motion, he pulled my legs over his lap. I gasped, the seatbelt tightening across my chest as I shifted sideways to face him. His grip on me was rough, protective. Possessive. He didn't look at me. But I could feel the way his breath hitched. Touch me, he growled, his voice low and serrated, like gravel scraped over steel. His eyes flicked toward me for a split second, burning. So I remember why I shouldn't turn around and end him. My throat tightened. I could barely breathe. His fury curled around my spine like smoke, beautiful and dangerous. Vasper, I whispered, reaching out, brushing my fingers along the inside of his arm. The heat of his skin pulsed beneath my touch, tight and coiled like a predator resisting the urge to strike. Louis shouldn't have interfered, he muttered, jaw clenched. He doesn't get to leash me. No one touches me like that. Not even a fucking guardian. His tone deepened, raw. They don't know what I'm holding back. What I've buried. Daimon does. He always fucking did. That's why he went after you. I placed my palm over his hand. I'm here, with you. A harsh exhale burst from his nose. You don't get it, he snarled. You're not just someone I protect. You're not a mission. You're not leverage. You're my weakness, Shanti. My goddamn weakness. I could feel the tremor in him. And I knew what that meant. We weren't just running. We were unraveling. Behind us, the headlights of the other hypercars bore down, piercing the darkness like vengeful gods. Louis's silver Pininfarina Battista a sleek phantom, Gabriel's matte black Valkyrie like a prowling demon, Justin's crimson LaFerrari glowing like blood, and Jacob's ghost white Zenvo TSRS, a specter of judgment. None of them spoke. Their silence screamed louder than thunder. Then, without warning, Vasper yanked the wheel. The Lamborghini veered left, tires shrieking as it tore into an unmarked clearing veiled by shadow. The vehicle fishtailed slightly on gravel and moss before he brought it to a violent stop. Leaves flew into the air. Dust danced in the beams of the headlights. Within seconds, the others followed, encircling us like hounds bracing for war. Still, Vasper said nothing. He stared into the rearview mirror. And then, I felt it. The change in the air. The doors of the other hypercars opened in eerie synchronization. No urgency. No panic. Only precision. Commanding, godlike precision. Louis emerged first, tall, commanding, every inch his title. His silver coat fluttered faintly in the breeze. His gaze was unreadable behind crystalline lenses, but I could feel his disappointment like ice. Jacob followed, hair tousled from the wind, eyes bright with barely contained fury. The flicker of light beneath his palms warned of power barely held in check. Justin stood calmly beside his car, but his jaw was locked, and the tension in his stance belied his silence. Gabriel was last, his silver shades reflecting the moonlight. He leaned on his car door, almost casual, but his stillness was coiled and sharp like a waiting blade. They looked like celestial judges. And they were livid. I reached for the door. Click. The lock slammed shut before my fingers even grazed the handle. My breath caught. No, Vasper said without turning his head. His voice was steel. You stay here. I will not let them see you break for me. Please, I whispered. Don't face them alone. His silence was my answer. He pushed the door open on his side and stepped out with lethal grace. The wind pulled at his black shirt, revealing the outline of his sculpted back, the tension in every muscle. He looked like a god descending into purgatory. Louis approached, slow and cold. You lost control, he said, voice clipped. Again. Vasper turned, slow and deliberate. And you interfered. You would have incinerated everything. I should have, Vasper spat. I should have burned Daimon and his fucking estate to ash. But no, you leash me. Like some rabid dog that needs taming. You crossed a line. Vasper's eyes blazed. You don't get to say that. Not you. Then Jacob stepped forward. His voice thundered. You think this is about pride? About territory? No, Vasper. This is about the world you just endangered. Vasper opened his mouth, but Jacob cut him off. Daimon sent the footage. The teleportation. The power surge. Everything. He delivered it to the Outer Worlds Security Council. The clearing went deathly silent. Jacob's voice lowered. The top military overseer. The one we've kept blind for decades. You exposed the inner world. No, Vasper whispered, but his voice cracked. Yes, Jacob snarled. They've activated AI sentinels already. They're triangulating every anomaly. If they find proof of our existence, one slip, the Treaty of Division is done. War, Vasper. Extinction. You handed them the match. Lewis added, his voice like ice over fire, they're building dimensional weaponry. Reality disruptors. Tech designed to kill gods. I saw it hit him. Vasper staggered slightly. Then, he snapped. A scream of energy tore from him as he lunged at Lewis. Power flared like lightning. The ground trembled. But Gabriel was faster. With a pulse of invisible force, he blasted Vasper backward through the air. Simultaneously, Justin launched a counterblast that hurled Lewis in the opposite direction. They hit the ground hard. The clearing shook. Leaves and dirt exploded skyward. A nearby tree split with a groan. Enough! Jacob roared, his voice splitting the air. You want to destroy something? Wait until we're extinct. I couldn't take it. I slammed my hand against the window. Vasper! The cry echoed. He froze. Half-crouched, energy coiling around him like storm tendrils, he looked back. Slowly, painfully, he rose and walked back to the car, jaw clenched, shoulders trembling. He slid into the seat beside me and gripped the wheel so tightly that it groaned beneath his hands. I reached for him. He sat still for one breath. 2. Then he moved. He turned to me like a dam breaking, eyes tortured, jaw tight. He unbuckled my belt. Then he pulled me into his lap, roughly, desperately, until I straddled him. His mouth crashed onto mine. I'm sorry, he whispered, again and again, broken between kisses. I'm sorry. I love you. I'm losing everything, except you. I kissed him back, arms around his neck, grounding him, anchoring him. I'm here. I'm yours. I'll burn the world before I let them take you. And in that moment, I believed him. Outside the Revuelto, the 4 guardians slowly regrouped, silent, grim. Lewis stood first, dusting his coat. He looked toward the car, his expression unreadable. With a final glance at Gabriel, he turned and returned to his Batista. Gabriel said nothing. He watched Vasper for a long moment behind silver lenses, then nodded once, imperceptibly, and walked away. Justin lingered the longest, his gaze softening just slightly toward the car. Then he, too, turned, stepping into his LaFerrari. Jacob remained still until the last. He stared at the Revuelto with haunted eyes, then whispered something only the wind heard. He climbed into his Zenvo. The engines roared to life again. One by one, they pulled out of the clearing and disappeared into the trees, swallowed by the night. Leaving us alone, in the silence, in the aftermath. I stood outside Jasmine's apartment building, the very same one Jake Valerian had bought for her and her siblings, a quiet gesture of love and responsibility. It was his way of ensuring they'd never have to worry about shelter again. A home carved out of chaos. It was one of the many reasons Jasmine had been grateful to Jake, and one of the reasons why I hesitated now. Because I didn't know how to explain to her any of this. Not about Vasper. Not about us. Not about how I had chosen to love the man she had grown to despise. Vasper stood close behind me, too close. The warmth of his body radiated through my back like live current, his chest pressed just inches away from my nape. I could feel the heat of his breath against my hair, the possessive weight of his hand curled protectively around my waist. His lips brushed my crown, soft, claiming. And then, in a low, grounding whisper, "You can do this. She'll understand." His voice was velvet and smoke, calming and strong, but laced with quiet tension. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment. Trying to summon the courage to face my best friend. God, I hoped she'd understand. But I wasn't so sure. Jasmine had every reason to hate Vasper ever since our fallout. Ever since the painful truth about Samara's pregnancy and what it had done to us. Jasmine had seen the devastation it left behind. She had held me through the pain, through the confusion. She had sworn never to forgive him for what he did. She had meant it. Now, I was back. With him. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, so loud I was sure Vasper could feel it. His fingers tightened slightly on my waist, as if sensing the growing storm inside me. "Relax, baby. It's just your best friend, not an enemy," he whispered again, a soft chuckle coloring his tone. But I didn't laugh. My voice was barely a murmur, laced with dread. I don't even know how to explain this to her. You know how she looked at you last time. You saw it. She hated you. And now, after everything, with Jake gone, and all this between us, how could she ever understand? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned me gently toward him. His hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face up until his lips hovered just a breath from mine. The fire in his eyes dimmed into something softer, something real. What they think doesn't matter. Not Jasmine. Not her family. Not anyone. What matters is us. You and me. That's the only truth I care about. His voice was low, rasped with emotion, gravel and silk. Plant that in your heart, my love. Let it grow there. Nothing else. And then, he kissed me. A deep, searing kiss that pulled the breath from my lungs. His hand slid behind my neck, the other wrapping tight around my waist, drawing me into him with a desperation that matched my own. A small whimper escaped me as he deepened the kiss, claiming every inch of my fear and burning it away. When he pulled back, our foreheads remained pressed, breaths mingling. His gaze locked with mine, dark and devastatingly beautiful. I love you. That's what matters. Only that. His thumb grazed my lower lip, and I had to stop myself from melting right there in his arms. God, this man. So unreasonably gorgeous, so dangerously mine. And for a split second, I wondered, how would Clarissa react? Jasmine's younger sister? What would she think if she saw me with him? They already knew. The world did. It had spread through the media like fire, Samara's press conference, the revelation of her and Vasper's twisted past, the public unraveling of his secrets. And yet, here I was. Still choosing him. Still fighting for us. I can do this. I told myself as I turned back toward the door. I was just about to press the doorbell when the door suddenly swung open. A blur of energy burst through, a whirlwind of laughter and limbs. Shanti! Margaret's voice rang out before I could speak. She flung her arms around me, hugging me so tightly it nearly stole the air from my lungs. She bounced in excitement, her laughter bright and breathless, but her eyes were glassy with tears. Oh my God! We missed you so much. Do you know how worried we've been? Jasmine was crying for days after Jake's death, and she choked, her voice catching. You never called. Not once. Her hands gripped my arms now, holding me at a slight distance, eyes scanning me as if trying to check if I was truly okay. Her face twisted, relief, joy, sorrow, all tangled into one. Her bottom lip trembled. She tried to smile, but the weight of her words betrayed the pain she'd been carrying. You didn't even call, Shanti, she whispered, her voice cracking again. I froze, guilt washing over me like cold rain. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I couldn't explain everything. Not now. Not all at once. How could I possibly tell her the truth? That Jake, her hero, had died because of something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. That I had fallen back into the arms of the man they believed responsible. That the world we knew was only a sliver of a deeper reality, one shaped by powers, by legends, by secrets too ancient to name. That I was no longer just Shanti. That Vasper was no ordinary man. That the sword of destiny existed. That Jake had died protecting a world they never even knew they were part of. And Jasmine? Jasmine didn't even know about the Guardians. About Vasper's power. About Marco's true identity. But now, maybe she did. Maybe Marco had already told her everything. Maybe the veil had already lifted. I didn't know. And the fear of that unknown sat like lead in my chest. My heartbeat thundered again, more erratic now. And Vasper, he must have felt it. His hand found my waist again, grounding me. Breathe, he murmured softly behind me. And so I did. Barely. The warmth of Margaret's embrace still lingered faintly on my skin, but the moment her eyes shifted, caught sight of the man standing quietly behind me, everything changed. Her smile faltered. Her laughter, once bubbling with sincerity, fell silent mid-note, as though the air had been sucked from her lungs. She stiffened, the light in her eyes flickering with uncertainty. Her body, which had leaned so openly into mine, drew back just slightly, shoulders squared, hands clasped awkwardly in front of her as though unsure what to do with them. Her gaze darted from my face to the towering figure behind me. Vasper. His presence was unmistakable, even without words, too magnetic, too commanding. His shadow loomed like dusk had fallen all over again. Margaret's voice cracked in the tight silence, and she looked at me with a strained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I stepped in gently. Margaret. I came with Vasper. I wanted to talk to Jasmine. In person. If that's all right. For a long second, she didn't answer. When our eyes met again, there was a flicker of hesitation, but then, slowly, she nodded, lips pressing into a thin line as she forced a smile. Vasper's hand tightened on my waist. A gentle squeeze. Possessive. Calming. A silent message, I've got you. Then he stepped forward, just enough that his chest was level with her field of view. His tone was low, calm, yet impossibly deep, and impossibly polite. Margaret, he said, his voice as rich and smooth as midnight velvet. It's good to see you again. I apologize for our first meeting. I know it didn't leave a favorable impression. Margaret froze. Her face turned a shade redder, the flush creeping up from her neck to her cheeks. She dropped her gaze quickly, almost bashful, before forcing herself to meet his eyes again. She nodded, almost shyly, and when Vasper extended a hand, her movements were stiff, delayed, but she took it. Their handshake was brief, but her fingers lingered longer than necessary, and I could see it, the slight, trembling smile on her lips, the quick rise of her chest, the barely there tremor in her lashes. She had a crush on him. That much was unmistakable. And he had that effect on people. Especially female. but I just watched from the side, a small smile tugging at my lips as I observed them. For some reason, the moment didn't bother me. I was thankful for the gesture, thankful that maybe this could be the beginning of peace between Vasper and my friends. Please let this be the start of understanding. Please let Jasmine see what I see. Margaret cleared her throat. Jasmine's not here right now, she said, guiding us gently through the doorway. She's been staying at Marco's penthouse for the past few weeks. They plan to move to his chateau in New Zealand after the wedding. As we stepped inside, my breath hitched. The living room was breathtaking. A modern blend of minimalist Japanese elegance and grand European artistry. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls bathed the space in the soft shimmer of early dawn, revealing a panoramic view of the sleeping city below. From this height, atop a rocky cliffside that overlooked the distant mountain ranges of rural Japan, you could see it all. No longer buried on the lower floors like before, they had moved up. The 9th floor, newly added, newly renovated. The polished wooden floors were a warm contrast to the steel-framed glass, and intricate paneling wrapped around the room in subtle gold accents. Hanging scrolls with calligraphy adorned one side, while a Renaissance-style chandelier hung above a marble coffee table. The far-off snow-capped peaks, now green and glowing faintly in the horizon, completed the surreal contrast of east and west. I sat beside Vasper on the deep gray sofa, his arm never leaving my waist. He pulled me gently into his side, and I melted there without resistance. His lips brushed mine in a soft, tender kiss, brief, reverent. And just as our mouths parted, we both turned to see Margaret watching us in stunned silence, lips slightly parted, expression frozen. The awkwardness hit like a drop of cold water. She blinked rapidly, then flustered, ran a hand through her hair and let out a nervous laugh. "Oh my God, Shanti, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare, her voice trailed off. She fidgeted, hands wringing in front of her, her eyes darting from Vasper to me and back again. "I guess I wasn't expecting to see you like this, with him." Her voice trembled at the end, uncertain. I think I need some time to process this. Last time I saw you, Jake was with you. And now, she shook her head, as if trying to shake loose the disbelief. I don't know how this all happened." Vasper remained still. His face, which had softened moments earlier, was once again unreadable, but I could feel the tension in his body as Margaret spoke Jake's name. I placed my hand over his, where it rested on my thigh, and gave it a light squeeze. He pulled me closer. "It's okay, Margaret," I said softly. "I understand. I really do. Just give it time. I hope you can accept this someday. I know it's hard. But you'll see what I see, eventually." Margaret gave a hesitant smile, eyes glossed with emotion. She nodded. I'll call Clarissa. She's in her room. Thankfully, she doesn't have an interview today. You know how her pageant schedules have been lately, crazy busy." She turned and walked off toward the hallway, heels soft against the polished wood. As soon as her back was turned, my heart clenched. Clarissa. God. Of all people. I wasn't sure how she'd take this. She always had a soft spot for Vasper, one she never really admitted but that I had always known was there. Now, everything had changed. Now, she'd see him with me. I glanced at Vasper. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, eyes scanning my face like he was trying to decipher every emotion beneath my skin. Slowly, he reached out, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, tucked it gently. The gesture almost broke me. "Clarissa," Margaret called cheerfully from the hallway, her voice echoing lightly. "Come out. Shant is here." A few knocks followed. And then the door opened. Clarissa stepped out slowly, her hair cascading around her shoulders in loose waves, eyes still hazy from rest. She looked at Margaret first, then followed her gaze. Straight to us. To me. To him. Her face froze. I saw it all, shock, confusion, and something that twisted into quiet pain and embarrassment. Her smile faltered, lips trembling in a forced upward curve. Her posture stiffened, and she clutched the doorframe with one hand as if for balance. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. And I couldn't breathe. Clarissa stepped out, still adjusting her tousled hair, a lazy hand smoothing the strands as if she'd only just woken up. Her skin glowed with the softness of sleep, flushed slightly pink, and she wore nothing but a paper-thin tank top, no bra beneath, and a pair of dangerously short shorts that barely covered her thighs. Her toned stomach was fully visible, navel exposed. She was effortlessly alluring, and she knew it. I felt the air tighten. Margaret, on the other hand, visibly stiffened, her smile faltered, a nervous laugh stuck in her throat. Her eyes darted to me, then to Clarissa, her hand fluttering awkwardly as she reached out in a half-hearted gesture of modesty. "Clarissa, change your clothes," Margaret hissed, her voice clipped with embarrassment. "Seriously, not now." But Clarissa didn't stop. She ignored the warning entirely, her eyes focused like a laser, not on me, but on the man beside me. Vasper. Her gaze clung to him, slow and lingering, as though drinking in every inch of his presence. I could feel it. She didn't see me anymore. I was invisible in that moment. And God, how that made something tighten in my chest. Margaret gave me a sheepish look, lips trembling with a nervous smile, clearly apologetic. I could read it in her face. She was mortified. Her shoulders curled inward, as if trying to shrink from the awkwardness suffocating the space. I turned slowly to Vasper. His gaze was steady, fixed entirely on me. Unwavering. Serious. Calm. He wasn't even looking at Clarissa. That fact alone made my heartbeat falter. Still, my feet moved before I could fully process what I was doing. I stood, breath shallow, meeting Clarissa halfway. I forced a smile, the kind that begged peace. "Clarissa," I said softly. She stopped a few steps away from me and tilted her head, that smile stretching across her lips, too wide, too sweet to be genuine. She leaned in for a hug. "Shanti." "I missed you," she chimed, her voice light but hollow, practiced. "So glad you're here. How have you been?" I wrapped my arms around her briefly, even as I felt her gaze drifting behind me, straight back to Vasper. And then I heard it. "Vasper Mondragon," she said, with the kind of breathless giddiness a girl reserved for fantasies. "Hi." She extended her hand toward him, and I watched, every second stretching like a string pulled taut, as Vasper rose. His arm slid protectively around my waist before he reached out with his other hand, accepting the handshake with calm, polite grace. Just a brief shake. Brief, but enough to make Clarissa blush crimson. Even Margaret noticed, her brows lifting subtly as her eyes darted between us, registering the tension like an observer watching a storm form on the horizon. "I'll go prepare drinks," Margaret announced suddenly, far too loud. I glanced toward Vasper. His hand still rested on my waist, firm, possessive. Grounding. Clarissa stood awkwardly nearby, her attention flickering between us. She wasn't even trying to hide it. Her eyes roamed to Vasper again and again, and I saw the confusion blooming in her eyes. Then came Margaret's voice again, sharp and biting. "Clarissa. Clothes. Change them. Jesus Christ." "Sorry," Clarissa said with a coy laugh, looking down at herself. But her smile wasn't apologetic, it was coy, flirtatious, aware of the attention. She turned slowly, deliberately, her hips swaying as she walked back toward her room. Her pace was slow, calculated. Even Margaret's jaw tensed as she tracked the swing of her sister's walk. I could feel my pulse climbing. My stomach knotted with something I didn't want to name. She was beautiful. Undeniably so. And I hated myself for feeling this. Insecurity, jealousy, fear. But before I could spiral, Vasper's hand squeezed mine. Gently. Then he drew me closer, closer until my back pressed against his chest, his chin rested atop my head. He whispered softly, lips brushing my hair. "Relax, baby, is something wrong?" His tone was low, soft, meant only for me. I looked up at him. My voice came out faint, breathy. "She likes you." He didn't answer with words. He turned me toward him, tilted my chin, and kissed me. Not just a kiss. A promise. His mouth molded against mine with possessive heat, his lips claiming me slowly, deeply. When he pulled away, the warmth of him still clung to my lips. "I don't care who likes me," he murmured, his forehead pressed against mine. "I only want the woman I'm holding now. You. And that's never going to change." His words sank into me like sunlight, melting every icy thread of doubt in my heart. My hands curled against his chest, grounding myself in the only thing that mattered, his presence. His love. From behind us, I heard the door creak again. Clarissa had returned, this time dressed in a tight, form-hugging top with a deep neckline, and a skirt that showcased most of her legs. The color complemented her skin, and her walk, graceful and deliberate, spoke of practice on stage. Beauty queen poise in every step. But her eyes? Still locked on Vasper. Still searching for something she would never get. Vasper didn't look at her. Not once. His hand slid up my back, cradling my head. His other hand stayed firmly on my waist. He didn't release me even as Clarissa stepped fully into the room and took a seat with Margaret at the glass center table. Margaret placed the tray down gently, clearing her throat to break the tension, while Clarissa adjusted herself with the grace of someone who always assumed eyes were watching. And maybe they were. But not the ones she wanted. Vasper's attention was only on me. His thumb brushed my knuckles, his touch tender but firm. My chest felt like it would shatter from everything: jealousy, relief, love, nerves. Across from me, Clarissa's expression faltered. Her eyes burned with restrained emotion, envy, perhaps. Frustration. She sat like a woman who had come to realize the game had already been lost. Margaret tried to hide the awkwardness by sipping her tea. Clarissa crossed her legs, exhaling slowly, her smile forced. And Vasper? He turned his head toward me. Kissed the side of my forehead. Softly. Deliberately. As if to say, mine. I leaned into him. Because I was. And always would be. The tension in the air was so thick it could have been sliced with a blade. We sat around the low table in the living room, the soft amber glow of the ceiling light casting long shadows over the lacquered wood and porcelain dishes. Margaret had gone all out, her wave trying to create a warm, welcoming atmosphere despite the palpable storm brewing in silence. She had prepared an array of snacks, golden brown gyoza arranged in a tight spiral, steam still curling from their crispy edges, yakitori skewers glazed in a rich, glistening tare sauce, and small ceramic bowls filled with edamame dusted in sea salt. A tray of shoestring-cut French fries was nestled beside the Japanese spread, an odd but familiar comfort. I forced myself to pick at a dumpling, chewing slowly, almost mechanically. My stomach was too twisted to feel hunger. But I had to respect Margaret's effort. I had to try. Vasper, ever composed, sat beside me, legs relaxed, one arm slung low across the back of the couch. He reached for a French fry with casual grace, bringing it to his mouth without looking. He wasn't hungry, I could tell, but he played the part out of politeness or instinct. Margaret chatted lightly about our childhood, trying to keep things bright. We laughed, softly, about weekends spent in my family's mansion, how my nanny, who was their mother, used to herd them into my room for sleepovers. We watched movies until late. Shared blankets. Secrets. Those memories lived deep inside me, a part of the foundation of who I was. Family. That's what Jasmine, Clarissa, and Margaret had become to me. But it had always been Jasmine I was closest to. Clarissa, not so much. She was always the moody one, refusing to join games she didn't like, pouting when things didn't go her way. Margaret, on the other hand, was the peacemaker. Always agreeable, always following Jasmine's lead. And Jasmine, eldest, responsible, firm like a second mother. Always reminding us of the rules, always reminding me of who I was meant to be. But things had changed since fate threw Vasper into my orbit. Since the Guardians. Since the death of Don Lorenzo, my father. Now, the air between us all felt brittle. Like one wrong word would make everything shatter. Margaret had called Jasmine moments earlier, switching the phone to loudspeaker so we could all hear. Jasmine's voice had lit up with excitement at the sound of us being there, especially me. She didn't know. Not everything. And I didn't know if she suspected. My body was stiff with nerves, but I masked it behind small bites and fake smiles. Clarissa, meanwhile, sat across from me, her every movement a performance. She leaned forward just enough to give Vasper a direct view of her cleavage, her lips subtly glossed and glistening under the warm light. Her gaze was molten, slow and deliberate, sliding from his hands to his jawline, to his eyes. And then, she smiled. A smile that wasn't friendly. Vasper didn't react. His eyes flicked to her once, quickly, then returned to his plate. He reached for another fry, expression unreadable. Clarissa wasn't used to being ignored. Clarissa, Margaret muttered inwardly. You're going to burn a hole in him with those eyes. I clenched my fingers under the table, trying to stay composed. She had changed. Grown bolder. Too bold. This wasn't the girl I remembered. She tossed her hair back and crossed her legs, the motion too sharp, too calculated. Sorry, she said lightly, brushing invisible lint off her thigh. But Vasper, wow. You really do look different now, compared to the last time we saw each other. Back when Jake was still, with Shanti. Vasper stilled. His hand paused over the fry. Just a second. But I saw it. The shift in his jaw. The way his throat moved as he swallowed. He chuckled softly, but it was tight. Controlled. Not real. Clarissa tilted her head. Didn't think it was possible to replace someone so fast. But hey. I guess life moves on. Her voice carried that particular lilt, half accusation, half flirtation. Sweet and sharp. Her smile curved at the edges, her lashes fluttering just enough to be noticed. Her fingers idly twirled a piece of hair. Margaret sat stiff beside her, lips thinning. Clarissa, she snapped, nearly standing. Don't say things like that, especially not in front of Shanti. Her choices are hers, and you don't get to question them. That's rude. Her cheeks were flushed with anger, hands curled into fists on her lap. Clarissa shrugged, unfazed. Just saying what everyone's thinking. It's okay, Margaret. Vasper's voice broke through like warm steel. He leaned forward then, spine straightening, posture alert. His eyes, piercing and cool, locked onto Clarissa. Her pupils dilated. She liked the attention. Clarissa, I began, wanting to defuse it. But Vasper reached under the table and placed his hand over mine, his fingers firm, grounding. He squeezed, silencing me. My breath hitched. Clarissa's gaze dropped to her hands. Her jaw tensed. A tic formed near her temple. The truth is, Vasper said evenly, Shanti and I have been together since before things fell apart. Since I made mistakes that drove us apart. When Samara got pregnant, it ruined everything. I lost Shanti because I was an asshole. But I never stopped loving her. His tone was unflinching, voice low but forceful. Jake had her for a time, yes. But I never gave up. I never stopped fighting to win her back. Clarissa let out a short, bitter laugh at the mention of Samara. Her nails tapped against her glass. I paid for my sins, Vasper said. And now she's mine again. As she was always meant to be, I'm just taking back what's mine. His gaze softened only when it landed on me. Clarissa tried to hide it, but the bitterness on her face bloomed like a stain. Her gaze didn't even flicker to me. I squeezed his hand back, but then he pulled me closer. His arm slipped around my waist, tugging me into his side until my thigh was flush against his. Our joined hands rested on my leg, his grip tightening. I gasped softly, heat crawling up my neck. Margaret looked away, clearly embarrassed. Clarissa didn't. But she said nothing. And the silence that followed burned hotter than fire.